This is the story of the elevator. The first step, get on the elevator. A friend told me of a game when we were drunk. It was a way to visit a parallel universe. He said he read it on some website he found online when he was researching creepy stuff. It's super simple Naoto, he said. You should try it out. As usual, even though he was a fan of the supernatural, he was always too chicken to do or go to places that involved it. I didn't believe in ghosts or things like that, but Ty didn't say that this parallel universe involved ghosts. I was a science fiction nerd, and the possibility of maybe visiting a world where World War I didn't happen or a different set of animals existed appealed to me, even if the method was kind of absurd. It was summer break anyway, and there was nothing much to do except sweat and read mangas, so I found myself in front of an old apartment building on a Wednesday afternoon. One of the requirements for the game is to have an elevator that can go to at least 10 floors, and during that game, no one else can get on. Ty already researched for the best place to do it, and he told me that this apartment building was to be torn down soon and only had a couple of tenants left. It was surprising that a building this old had an elevator, and I hoped that it wouldn't break down on me. It was one of the hottest days this summer, and as with many places in Japan, there is no central air. There was a high chance I could die if I was trapped. I went in and found the elevator. The second step, go to the 4th floor. I rolled my eyes. Of course, the first place to go would be the 4th floor. The number 4, sure, sounds like death, sure, superstitions were something I didn't give much mind to. I pressed the button and the shaft groaned as it began to ascend. The inside felt like it was at least 20 degrees hotter than it was outside, and I felt sweat begin to collect on my brow. The elevator chimed as it finally hit its destination, and the door slid open. The third step, go to the 2nd floor. The first half of the game was just going to different floors. I just hoped that no one would get on unless I would have to start over again, and I didn't know if I could last another round in this sauna. The 4th step, go to the 6th floor. Thankfully I brought a sports drink with me. I took a swig and it made me feel somewhat cooler. When the doors opened this time, a wind of fresh air came with it and I sighed appreciatively. The 5th step, go to the 2nd floor. So far so good. No one has tried to come in, and after this next step, things are supposed to get interesting. The 6th step, go to the 10th floor. Nothing felt different except that I was feeling a lot cooler now. I realized that there was a feeling of wind in the closed shaft as it rose, and I wondered if this was part of the game. I got to the 10th floor with no issues. The 7th step, go to the 5th floor. Now this was where the game would prove itself authentic. The directions that Ty gave me said that on this floor a young woman would get on the elevator, and since only older tenants remained in the apartment, there would be a low possibility of her being a coincidental bystander. I felt my heart rate speed up as I watched the lighted numbers on top of the doors drop down steadily, not because of fear, but of excitement. As I passed the 8th floor, the lights inside the shaft gave out. I had a second of panic, imagining myself trapped in here, but the elevator was still moving. The doors had windows in which I could see out into the passing halls. I got closer to peer out to see if all of the buildings had their lights out. It was on the 6th floor when I saw a man's face pressed against the other side of the glass. I jumped back, the beaten figure of his face vivid in my mind even though I only saw it for a split second. I was startled again when the chime went off and the doors opened. The lights in the hallway were on while the elevator was still dark. There was no one waiting to get in, and I let the door close. I was a bit disappointed, but I decided to go through with the rest of the game, or at least go back up to check if the man I saw was a figure of my imagination or not. I reached out to push the next button for the game when the lights suddenly came back on. I looked around and my breath caught in my throat. A woman was standing in the shaft next to me. I managed to not yell out, but I did trip in my haste to back away. Even as I lay on the floor, she didn't so much as glance in my direction. I took a moment to collect myself and observed her. She seemed like a normal woman. She was wearing a simple light pink dress and her straight dark hair reached to her shoulders. The hair acted as a curtain and I couldn't see her face, although at this point I wasn't sure if I wanted to. I looked down and noticed that she was carrying a clear plastic umbrella even though it hadn't rained in a month. As I pondered this, I noticed something else as well. The umbrella was covered in what looked like blood. It was still wet and dripping down the plastic. Then I noticed that her white stockings were drenched in red as well. At this point, I realized that this was the lady described in the game, and I slowly stood up. One of the rules was to not talk to the lady at all costs. Another was that if I wanted to bail, this was the last chance to do it. The 8th step, go to the first floor. I pressed the button labeled 1, and just like how Ty described, the elevator went up instead of down. As we passed the 6th floor again, I peered out but didn't see the man. There was a large blood splatter on the glass. I glanced nervously at the umbrella. On the site Ty found, it said that once you passed the 9th floor, it was pretty much guaranteed that you succeeded in the ritual. There was a moment of hesitation when the light turned to the 8th floor, but by the time I considered getting off, we had already made it to the 9th, and soon the chime rang for the 10th floor. The doors opened. The 9th step, confirmation. The first thing I noticed was that the inside of the elevator was cold. There was AC. Looking out into the hallway, I could see that the carpet was new and that the wallpaper was clean, completely different from the rundown apartment I was supposed to be in. This already proved to me that we were in a parallel world. I felt a little bit of joy, but then I quickly remembered the lady beside me. I took a glance at her from the corner of my eye and saw that she was still standing in that same spot. I wanted to get out, but at the same time, I was scared of what could be out there. Ty had said that there was a method to make sure I completed the game and that he would text it to me later just to make sure I wouldn't back out early. Although I was pretty sure I was where I was supposed to be, I slowly pulled out my phone, afraid to make any sudden movements at her presence. The first thing I noticed was that I still had a weak signal here. I pondered that information while I pulled up the text that I received from Ty a few minutes ago. It read, "Okay, so here's the way to check if you're in the right place. Apparently, in that world, you are the only human in it. Have fun." I felt a chill go down my spine as I read. I knew somewhere in the back of my mind that the woman in the elevator with me wasn't human, but there was no evidence for it. "Are you getting off?" I froze. I hadn't realized that in the moment I took to read the message, the woman had moved. Her breathy voice was in my ear. I could feel the cloth of her dress rubbing against my arm and a wetness on my calf from her umbrella. I looked straight ahead, afraid to turn and see her face. Her black hair was in the corner of my vision, and I shuddered. "Are you getting off?" she asked again. Her breath smelled of flowers, an unexpected trait that stood out to me. It was a pleasant smell, but one that contracted harshly with the present situation and only managed to increase my fear. From down the hall a door opened. I watched bated breath and rigid posture as a face came looming out of the room. I could feel the woman next to me breathing on my neck, and I could hear the frantic breathing of my own as I saw a neck emerge next. But a body never followed. The face made its way down the hall while the neck stretched longer and longer. It was a woman's face. She was prettily make-upped and her hair was tied in a bun, but it was suspended 5 feet off the ground by a mass of flesh. As the neck stretched out longer, I felt a cold hand grab my own. The pink woman slowly led my hand to the buttons of the elevator, and I felt my finger push a button. I was still frozen on the spot as she got off the shaft. She never turned around, and I could only watch the back of her black hair as she approached the neck woman. "Hello, Michiko, how was purgatory?" I heard the neck woman ask cheerily as the doors closed and the elevator began to descend. My mind was at a complete loss, and I didn't notice I had reached the ground floor until an old man cleared his throat. I jumped and he looked at me strangely. "Are you getting off?" he asked, and I scrambled out of there remembering the woman. I didn't even check to see if I was in the right world or not as I ran home. Nothing happened to me afterward, but I went to a temple just in case to get a cleansing. I didn't tell Ty or anyone else about what I saw that day, and I always try to use the stairs as much as possible. This isn't something I wanted to talk about because I don't want people to copy what I have done, but I do want to raise awareness. Games or rituals that involve the supernatural are not something to be taken lightly, and I want everyone who is planning on doing anything to take a moment and weigh out the pros and cons. I don't know who that lady was or if she saved me or not, but I'm not going to go back to find out.